If you've been asking yourself, how can I help Bitch versus Bear grow? Well, first of all, thank you for asking. Second of all, head over to where you listen and rate our show or leave a review.
Or you can head over to Instagram at ShieldMaidenTC and comment on a post or ask us a question.
Yes, we love questions.
We do love questions. Thanks for your help, and now on to the show.
I don't want to be strong like men who look pretty. I want to be strong like bitch that fight bears in the forest.
Welcome back to Bitch vs. Bear. We are your hosts, Amber and Sydney, besties and owners of Shield Maiden Training Co. Oh, you were looking at me like I said something wrong.
I know
I got it right. I called you the right name and everything.
I know, that's the first one in 15 episodes where you got it right. I was so surprised.
That's why we stopped introducing ourselves.
It's true. Because the last time you did it, you introduced me as our guest, my wife, Shelby. So in case you were wondering, this week we are joined with one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, my wonderful wife, Shelby. We are going to be chatting about some fun things or not so fun things, negative self-talk and sabotage. She has a unique perspective that we think will be a great addition to the subject. We'll let her tell you a little bit about herself and why she actually chose the subject to chime in on.
Woohoo.
Woohoo. Okay, well,
So Shelby, tell us about yourself.
I'm like, oh my God, it's every like icebreaker at like worker class ever.
It is, yes.
Well, I have a bachelor's of science in neuroscience. And then I've use that both in like learning and behavior research on rodents in like a university lab, did that for a little bit, and then moved over into like the clinical world at a neuropsychology private practice where my whole job was administering cognitive testing. So I wasn't the psychologist who was ever giving any results or doing any interpretations, but I basically, learned a lot through them and just listening to them of, looking at all of the data that I collected and then seeing their interpretation. And they spend a lot of time teaching me a lot of things. So I was exposed to a lot of different psychological backgrounds and different things through that. I'm currently an Olympic weightlifter, meaning I do the Olympic lifts, not that I'm Olympian, if only. It's an important distinction to make. I found that through CrossFit and then did CrossFit for a couple of years, but I hate cardio and I like weightlifting, so made a lot of sense to shift. I've always been very active, either with outdoors. I played rugby in college, sports my entire life. So very active, athletic kind of person, although I am very klutzy for being so athletic.
That is
It's a really interesting combo.
It is. They feel like they should be mutually exclusive, and it's surprising every time when you're, see me fall down the stairs and then, make heavy lifts. It's like, how can you do both?
But you
get you a girl who can do both.
That is,
yeah. And then, I'm a big old nerd. I like data. I like science. I like fantasy books. I like all of the nerdy stuff. And then I spend an insane amount of time baking too. So
I think those things.
My favorite trait.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's everyone's favorite trait of mine.
I would say it's actually not my favorite trait. And the only reason being, if I eat everything you baked, I would be 300 pounds.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Yeah. That is hard, especially during the pandemic. Anything that I baked, we had to eat because we couldn't see anyone. So
It's a good time.
it was delicious. It was great. I mean, especially like when we were quarantined at home, I made a lot of biscotti. Homemade biscotti is the shit.
It really is.
Yeah.
So.
I did enjoy that. Awesome.
Great.
So we are talking about things. Evil things. Bad things. Not evil. They're just like, they can be a little...
Those little inner demons.
Yeah, inner demons. That's a great way to put it. Yes. Inner demons.
Those things that we go to therapy for.
The things we can't solve here on this podcast.
Hard as we try.
Yeah, we do talk through a lot.
Okay, so we're talking about negative self-talk and how we can sabotage ourselves with that. But what is negative self-talk? And how does it lead to sabotage? So essentially, it's your inner monologue or voice, that inner demon, that focuses on the bad. It's very pessimistic and erodes your confidence, making you feel as though you will fail. And this can stop you from reaching your full potential.
Did we get that right, Shelby?
I mean, yeah, negative self-talk is literally what everyone thinks it is. You're just talking badly about yourself, or your perception of yourself is bad.
Yeah.
You know, not even bad, just negative.
Okay, so Shelby, putting on your neuroscience cap, can you explain for us the relationship between feelings, thoughts, and behaviors?
Mm-hmm. So the relationship between feelings, thoughts, and behaviors is like the basic for cognitive behavioral therapy. If you've ever heard of that or been in that type of therapy, it's basically thoughts, feelings, behaviors are all they're all intertwined. Like sometimes you might see it as a circle, sometimes you might see it as like a triangle, or like a formula of like this equals this equals this. But basically, if you wake up feeling like shit, like wake up just not in a good mood, like depressed episode, whatever it might be, if that's how you start feeling, that's how you're going to start thinking. And then that's going to lead to behaviors that will basically be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, and that it goes both ways. It's not like a linear kind of thing. They're all just kind of interconnected. So if you're doing self-destructive behaviors that are going to sabotage yourself, whether that's like drinking too much or texting your ex when you shouldn't, or eating all of the junk food that you're trying to avoid, and then you do it anyways, it's going to make you think about yourself, wow, I'm really shitty for doing these things I know I shouldn't do. And then you're going to start like feeling that way about yourself. So it can kind of go a lot of different ways. And the basis of CBT is when you start having those negative thoughts is that you find a positive replacement thought. So it's basically kind of like finding the silver lining, or like what's an alternative thought to like, oh God, like I ate so much junk food, and then spiraling. Instead of doing that, you can replace that with, wow, I really just needed food that made me feel good today. Or I was just really craving a burger and fries. Like my body was just telling me it needed something. I'm not a bad person for wanting these things. And instead of then like continuing on the like self-fulfilling prophecy of feeling like shit for your behavior, you can, basically give it less power.
I like that. Yeah. Because I think a lot of us fall into, especially around food, I think fall into that trap of like, well, I ate a ton of junk food, or I binged on, ice cream. So there goes, that goal of mine. And so it just like kind of goes down the drain.
Or it's like with, fitness too, like with lifting, you will have shitty training days. It's inevitable. A lot of people talk about the rule of thirds of like, which I don't even know all of it, but it's like a third of your days are going to be great. A third of your days are going to be kind of trash. And then a third of your days are going to be somewhere kind of in the middle. Like you can't have a good training cycle every day. But so like on those bad days, if you are having a really bad day, if you miss all of your lifts, you don't make any of your working sets, you miss the PR attempts, you miss the 98%. If you start like, wow, like, the behavior is you missed all of them. And then it's like the thoughts of like, wow, I'm a really shitty weightlifter. Like I shouldn't be doing this. I'm so terrible. Then you're going to like start, like you're going to feel that way, and you're going to believe that you're terrible.
I think people sometimes can fall into that trap too, from like a coaching perspective of, it's kind of like when people are like, oh, I'm having a bad training cycle or like a bad month. I'm not hitting things. And then they want to pop around and like jump to different coaches and do that kind of thing. And then like, you never see any results, right? Because you're constantly on the move.
Right. And like in that is also like a level of accountability that's needed. You have to take responsibility for your thoughts and your behaviors. Your feelings are valid. How you respond to them is what gets people into trouble. Like if this is, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me, but then like you go out and you're just an absolute asshole to everyone because of it. No one's faulting you for your feelings. They're faulting you for being an asshole because of it and not coping correctly or appropriately. So it's like the same thing of like, you kind of have to, feelings and thoughts, again, like all of them are valid. There's not like, I don't want anyone to think that there is like a wrong way to feel or a wrong way to think about yourself. They're just like, it's like a spectrum. There's some better ways. They're like, is it a useful thing? Is it helpful to think of yourself this way? So in that same vein, you have to take responsibility for all of them. It's like if you're having, if you're having a bunch of intrusive thoughts, it's like, ooh, let's take a step back. Like, why am I having all of these? Is there something that I'm avoiding? Is there something that I don't like, that I don't know that I don't like? Am I just not being very self-aware right now? But like, these thoughts are happening. I'm not a bad person because they're happening, but like, let's step back and like do something about it.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Okay. So I'm gonna throw a little shout out. So yesterday you competed in your Olympic lifting, and you had a really good meet. And so I think that's really awesome. But you have in the past said that you have struggled with some negative self-talk. So can you describe how you identified that was becoming like an issue? And like how did you take even the steps to realize you were doing it?
Well, that's the hardest. Becoming self-aware is so difficult. It is for everyone. And like not even being self-aware, but like learning awareness of things, like completely different like example. Like I remember really early on in our relationship, like our differences in what meant of like a clean house. Clean to me was it wasn't dirty, but it could be cluttered. Clean to you is that it was clean and non-cluttered. And so learning to be aware of, I don't see clutter on this table, but there's obviously clutter on the table to you. Like that's a really hard thing to learn. So same thing with, becoming aware of your own feelings. And I think spending a lot of time reflecting. Like I don't journal, I don't do any of that, but like, I don't know, I have like a really great memory and I can like visually replay an entire training session in my brain if I want. Not everyone has that. It's probably not the healthiest thing. That might
you're aware of it.
That might be a maladaptive skill, we would say. But I think just the more time you spend doing it, that's the other thing is like as a new weightlifter, you're going to come in and all you're going to do is compare yourself to others, compare yourself to like the people on your team, like the CrossFitters in the gym who outlift you by, 100 kilos and like they don't even do the weightlifting full time, so a lot of, comparison of yourself to others and the pro athletes and the Instagram models and then every coach on Instagram who wants to be famous on Instagram. It's like you just spend a lot of time ignoring all of the noise and then just like focusing on yourself, like focusing on your own skills. And, how was that training session? Did it feel good? Did you feel that, you were properly placed in all of your lifts? Did you feel strong? And that's kind of when you can start to identify, some of how of your feelings and your thoughts and how those kind of all relate to one another. So if you just spend the time kind of like not ruminating, but reflecting.
We talk a lot about reflection. I like it. I think that's
not a lot of people do, and like it is a skill, and it is uncomfortable.
It is,
because the obvious self-destructive behaviors or the obvious negative self-talk of like you miss lift and you're like, wow, I'm a piece of shit, I should quit. It's like that's an obvious one.
That's pretty blatant.
Yeah, it's like you can't ignore that one, but then the ones that are harder to tell are like well. Susie Q joined, 6 months after me, but she's already outlifting me. Oh man, like what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
Those quieter voices that are just kind of always there.
So your negative self-talk isn't always yelling. It's not always screaming at
No.
you. Sometimes it's whispering.
Sometimes it is. And sometimes it literally is just like a little voice in the back of your head. That's just like, could have done that better. Kind of missed the mark on that one, idiot. Do you know what you're doing? No.
Have you even seen a barbell before?
Honestly, and like, don't get me wrong, we all have those days.
Yeah, yeah, and that's another, I think, great point. Is like, even when you're doing it and it's happening, and you can't, but sometimes it's like this happens. Like, it's okay that I have these negative thoughts. And just like, okay, sometimes it's funny. Shelby makes it funny. Okay, so you've identified what it is. How in the past, has it impacted maybe your training, or maybe you've seen it impact other people's trainings and tried to like help coach them through it? I want to just point out that I have decided to also join the weightlifting team. So I'm digging for myself.
Personal advice.
I'm thrilled that Sydney has yet another hobby that we have to schedule all of our shield work around.
Yeah, so many hobbies. She stays busy this one. Well, honestly, like the thing that comes to mind is like the negative self-talk interfering is like if you can't let go of a lift. And we see this all the time with the gym bros. You know who they are. Whether they are ego lifting or they're not, but they miss a set and then they have a full man tantrum about it. And then they continue to have a shitty training session. And like, don't get me wrong, like, you know, lifting heavy weights, the emotions run high. Like, it's scary. It's fun. It's also really, really frustrating sometimes because the difference between, you know, a quarter of a second of like extra patience before you know, really explode, like that makes or break, like will make or break your lifts. So it can be really frustrating. But so if you're the kind of person who like attaches themselves to like a bad lift, like you're going to have a bad training session after that. But if you can, you know, use it as a teaching moment, you'll have a much better time. But it's really when you get into the cycle of like, wow, this was a bad lift, which leads to a bad training day, which leads to a bad training week, which just leads into a bad training cycle. And it's like, well, you know, bad training cycles happened. I had like 4 of them last year due to a bunch of other like outside factors. But even still, if you let like the bad times and like the bad thoughts and the bad perception of yourself like define you and your performance as an athlete, you're going to be a bad athlete. Like there's no way around that.
Yeah. So what have you done maybe recently to like start to alter these things? Because I think this last training cycle, you had a pretty good training cycle, and obviously yesterday you were successful. So
kicked ass yesterday.
I know yesterday was the most successful lift that I've had since I started weightlifting. Like first meet, I went 6 for 6, made all 6 lifts, which like, and again, that like sets the baseline level for competition PRs because like first comp. But then haven't gone 6 for 6 until yesterday, which first meet was like summer of 2021. So like a solid year and a half. And like the last meet I did wasn't very nervous just because I had really bad training cycles. So it's like, as long as I just show up and do something, like I'm happy with it. But yesterday managed to actually put a fair amount of pressure on myself to really do better and exceed all of my like competition PRs and somehow managed to not fuck it up. Like, because usually when you put pressure on yourself, it's so easy to like spiral and like, oh, there's so much pressure. Like, what if I drop it? What if I trip going out on stage? Like, I'm not kidding. That was a thought
that would be my biggest fear.
Yeah. And so in those situations, it's like, number one, if you have a good training foundation, you can just rely on your training. Your body knows what to do. So like you can take a deep breath and be like, yes, I want to do well and I want to excel and I want to like smash this meet. But like me worrying about it isn't going to help. So like I know my body, I will be safe. My body can handle it and my body knows what to do. So like relying on that was really helpful. And then as of like for the training cycle, like leading up, you know, I set like really firm boundaries about my training. I don't let people reschedule me from training very often, which, you know, people can get a little salty about, but you know, this is for me. This is like the one thing I do that is for me and only me, and it brings me joy. So having the firm boundaries, getting all of my training sessions in, and then like just being intentional about them, not, you know, sitting on my phone scrolling the entire time like I see like the 17-year-old boys do. I'm like, you guys might want to fix that.
It's just like a big thing for you because you're on your phone.
I know, I'm on my phone a lot. And don't get me wrong, I still check my phone. But I'm not like sitting there like lift and then like scroll, lift. You know, like we have a nice community that we talk, you know, we all talk and goof off like while we lift and while we're waiting. So yeah, I think really like being focused in the training cycle leading up to it, and then just trusting myself and like allowing myself to be nervous and anxious and, you know, worried about the outcome, but then like still doing my best despite that.
Yeah.
Like there's
Seems to have worked.
there was one moment, and you can edit this out if you want, whatever you want. Religious people, do not come at me, please. But you know where you're about to do something, or you want something to happen, and you're just like, oh God, please, I just want this to happen. And and like I was about to take my last clean and jerk. I had made all 5 of my other lifts, competition PR and the snatch. Was about to take a lifetime PR, meaning I'd never hit this number before, training or competition. Was a big deal. I'd fucked it up a few times, like in the weeks leading up. So like I really fucking wanted it. And I was like, oh God, I just want to make this lift. And in my head, I was like, there is no God. There is only me. So don't come at me, religious people. But what I mean by that is there's no weightlifting God who's going to help me through this. They're not going to help me lift the weight. It is me and only me who cannot fuck this up or fuck it up. Like it's all me. So gotta do what you can with it.
It's only me.
Yeah,
I love that.
No, I think exactly right. Like I think that's exactly what sometimes you need is like I am the one in control of the situation. The outcome is solely on my shoulders, and sometimes that puts an intense amount of pressure on yourself. But also going and being like, well, you know what? I trust that I've put in the work, and this is either going to happen or it's not. And if it doesn't happen, it's a learning. Like, what can I fix for next time to make it be successful?
Yeah.
Like,
and I think the basis of, a lot of things in weightlifting and like with negative self-talk is just, you have to take accountability for your entire self. It would have been really easy. Like there were a couple of technical delays in the meet yesterday. It would have been really easy if I performed poorly to be like, well, I had so much waiting time in the back. Like my things weren't timed correctly, had to take a bunch of extra warm-up lifts because of these pauses, blah, blah, blah. But, didn't stress on it, didn't focus on the negative, was like, it doesn't matter. The meet is still a meet. If I have a 20-minute break in between like my first and my second attempts, like I don't get a redo because of it. I still have to perform. So take the extra warm-ups, keep moving, don't dwell on it, and just, focus on what's coming next.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think you answered the next one that we have for you, which is what positive results have you seen since altering or recognizing your negative self-talk?
Lifetime PR.
That you have had a really good training cycle. You've done a lot of really cool things, and you've prioritized your training, which I think has helped a lot. Like you stay extra and make sure you do your accessories.
Nice job.
Which sometimes that's hard because like the training cycle or like the time is weird. I'm so hungry. I just want to go home and eat. But I'm like, no, I will protect my shoulders. I will protect my knees. I'll protect my back and just, take the 10 extra minutes it takes. But other positive results, not weightlifting related, is like, I don't know, you get a lot more clarity about yourself. And that can, ultimately, that can only be helpful. It might be rough in the middle, but ultimately, So like, I think just getting a better sense of self and what does work for me, what doesn't work for me, what do I want, what do I not want to do, how committed to this am I? It just gives you a whole lot more. It just helps paint a bigger picture when you're not focused on, I'm a trash weightlifter,
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I would also like to point out that your last training cycle was about the same amount of time as we've been releasing episodes. So I'm going to take some just
Nice.
It's us.
Nice.
We've helped.
Nice. I like that plug.
Yeah, you've been listening to Bitch vs. Bear for 15 weeks, and
Oh yeah, that solved all my problems.
Yeah, it didn't hurt. All right. Well, I think it would be cool for all of us to share some examples of when we recognized, or maybe when we didn't recognize we were having some negative self-talk that may have led to some sabotage. Shelby, you've already shared a ton, so now we're going to talk.
What, you don't like me coming on and capitalizing your podcast?
No, I love it. I think it's great. But we're
for it.
We're going to talk a little bit. You're going to go first.
I'm going to go first.
I hope you've been thinking about this.
I started to and then decided not to.
Weren't ready for that level of clarity yet. And that's okay.
I've only got to do 2 therapy sessions. Give me a break. We're not there yet. I mean, I feel like negative self-talk is just the theme of my life. So like it's hard for me to think of any specific instances because I feel like that's just the running commentary in my head. There's like no.
So it's a really poignant episode for you.
It is.
Well, it's like when it's your default kind of state of mind, it's everything, So it's hard to think of one thing, and it's also hard to like have that kind of insight and clarity of like, me and lifting specific negative self-talk. It's like, wow, okay, this is like a very insulated instance that this is happening in, and it's easy for me to change it. But when it's like embedded in your everyday life, it's like, do I have to literally like break myself down completely and rebuild? Like that's a lot.
Yes, that is exactly what I need to do. I am in therapy. It's okay.
We're making progress. It's fine.
I mean, I think one of the specific we'll go with the theme of self-talk, negative self-talk, that I noticed that like I feel really affects me is in social situations. Like even with you two, who I know love and accept me and value my presence, I still have these thoughts. I guess they're probably intrusive thoughts. And anytime I'm like in a social situation of like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Like, why they don't really want to hang out with me. Like these people are just being nice. Like, why am I imposing myself on them? Like it's like that's the yes.
That's not true, Amber.
I know that's not true intellectually.
Emotionally though.
That childhood trauma is like, you're an idiot. Nobody loves you. So I think that's kind of the biggest theme that I noticed that I feel leads to that self-sabotage where like it's hard to put myself back in those social situations or make new friends. So yeah, it's difficult to make friends when that's the commentary that's running through my head.
I mean,
and also that that's difficult for a number of reasons, but then also you can no longer trust yourself in a way.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened, it's now like thoughts and feelings, like they're all like completely separate entities almost. Cause like one is saying like your lived experience is one thing, but your thoughts are a different thing. And you're just gaslighting yourself.
Yes.
Yes. Like that just makes it exceptionally hard to reconcile those two, which also CBT, if you're not used to it, it can feel like you're gaslighting yourself.
Cool.
But it's like structured gaslighting yourself.
We love structure.
Love structure.
Love structure.
But yeah, like trying to find like a positive replacement thought for this negative thought that's causing you a lot of distress. It's like, but I have these feelings. These feelings are real. Like I am in crisis over my missed lift.
All right. Well, I'll jump back in. Give an example of when I recognized or didn't recognize self-talk. I feel like this is going to sound really arrogant, but I think it comes from a place of confidence, not arrogance, of like, I have worked really hard on making sure that I do all of those things that you were talking about, like finding the silver lining, like reframing thoughts, because I've had a lot of experiences where it would be easy to get into that like negative self-talk and like have my inner demons. And I try and avoid that as much as possible now that I'm older. And so I don't have a clear example, especially of anything recent, because I do work really hard on avoiding that. I suspect maybe coming up I'll have some more examples because it tends to happen for me when I try new things. But I also like to try new things, and I like to put myself in uncomfortable positions and like do things that are outside of my comfort zone so that I will have new experiences and work on these kinds of things. So it annoys Amber because I have a lot of hobbies because I try new things, and I'm like constantly being like, well, I'll give it a shot. How bad could it be?
I know it's like, anytime I try something new, if I'm not immediately good at it, I'm like, not the hobby for me.
Right.
I'm not an expert at the beginning. Not for me.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think I'm like, okay, well, I've really sucked at that. Guess I gotta keep going. Like, I guess I gotta keep trying. I have a feeling that's gonna happen coming up here. Picking up heavy
Tomorrow, lift heavy.
Yeah.
As a master's athlete and a new.
At least they get to be a master's
Honestly,
athlete.
though.
Like that's a silver lining. Like,
There you go.
know, I'm in an age bracket where I'm not competing necessarily against, like 18-year-olds who are like have unlimited energy and resources.
I know that's the hard thing with weightlifting. Like once you hit 35, like it's every 5 years that they do different age brackets. Each weight class has its own age bracket. There's plenty of room for everyone to compete. But if you're 34, you are competing against 18-year-olds and everyone in between. And like there's a little bit of junior, like actually no, I guess it's 21-year-olds because juniors are 18 to 21. But even still, 34 versus 21 are very different.
Yeah.
So once you kind of hit like 30, 31, 32, it's like my coach who just turned 31, I think, he's counting down the days until he's 35. He is so excited because he's like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to like blow everyone else out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, I do like that aspect of weightlifting. Like, what is a relatively young age in, like society is like, hey, we recognize that, like, maybe you shouldn't be trying to, like, compare yourself to these other people. You probably shouldn't be comparing yourself to anybody anyway, but, like, that's neither here nor there.
But in terms of competing, like, let's put you up against other people whose bodies are falling apart also.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That is the nice thing about weightlifting versus like some of the other sports that I've done is that, obviously I'm competing against other women my age, my same weight, but really at the end of the day, I'm just competing against myself. So that is nice that it's for those of us who aren't elite, we're really not competing against other people. You're just trying to better yourself.
Yeah.
Versus, other sports that I've done like rugby, all you want to do is just like must kill opponent.
Okay. So, Shelby, our last question for you is, what are some tips for recognizing negative self-talk and subsequent sabotage?
Well, I think it's almost like they kind of feed into another. If you're able to recognize that you're regularly kind of sabotaging yourself, if you're able to recognize it and then, walk it back to kind of see where it's originating from, that'll help you, I think, identify the problem. And then also, I think just being honest with yourself of, if you're consistently sabotaging this, why? Do you not want to do it? Are you not supported in it? Do you not feel ready for it? Like, if you're consistently missing the mark on like these certain areas, like not from like performance or anything, like my example goes back to like when I was in like a realtor, I was not that great of a realtor. Like I was partnered with someone, so it made it easier, but I wasn't that great at like getting clients and converting them. So like that was my self-sabotage. And when I finally kind of was honest with myself about it, it wasn't because I didn't have the resources or I didn't have the support. I just really fucking hated it. And then once I like gave myself the space to feel that, I was like, okay, I'm leaving. Like this is not for me, and that is okay. But I was in denial the entire time about what was actually happening. Tried to blame it all on I'm just an introvert. I don't want to talk to people. Not I hate every aspect of this.
That's a big difference.
Yeah. So I think if you are able to, number one, identify your self-sabotages, like which aren't necessarily your mistakes, but the areas where you're consistently falling short where you think you shouldn't be, or things are constantly not going the way you want them to or plan for them to. And then if you're able to walk it back and be honest with yourself about what the whole picture is looking like, you'll probably be able to identify either your real true feelings about it or, your real true thoughts on it. They're also interrelated. It's like if you can identify the behavior, you can figure out kind of the function from behind the scenes.
I like that. I like that you don't necessarily have to like pick out like, am I talking, is my inner demons rising right now? More like, okay, this is something that I have seen that I haven't been successful at. Why?
Mhm.
Why am I not being successful at this? And, because it can be really hard to pick out, like, when you're, like, oh, everyone around me is having the same experience and we're all negatively talking versus, like, why do I keep not meeting this goal or not being successful here?
Or, thinking about like your lived experience, Amber, with, just the duality of the two. And it's like, well, is this just a thought of mine, or like, is there a basis for this feeling? Like, did they tell me something that they don't like me anymore? did they show me in some direct way that they don't like me anymore versus, my brain's just being a dick to me today?
And the answer is always, of course, no.
But like, that's that's also another tool to be able to, did someone tell me this was a problem, or am I making it a problem in my head?
That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like that. Like, it's not a problem until somebody tells me it's a problem.
Mm-hmm. That's a really
You're good
effective,
at that.
That's a really effective one for work as well.
Mm.
It's like, if you just see, a dumpster on fire rolling by, that's not my problem until my manager is like, hey, you want to step in with that? Could really use the help. Then I'll be like, maybe. I'll consider it.
I also think that's like a little bit social norm for millennials, because we came of working age and all kinds of things during really interesting times, which of course every generation has, but like, it's applicable to us in that, we kind of were told like we had to be a little bit more intuitive, and like you have to go above and beyond, and you have to work harder, and you have to like showcase yourself a little bit. And it kind of goes back to that of like, oh, it's not a problem, I'm not going to make it a problem, I'm not going to say anything, or I'm going to solve the problem so nobody knew it was a problem.
Yeah.
And not say anything of like, hey, look, I went above and beyond. I just took care of it. So yeah, I think that is kind of just an interesting example.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you want to share with us about self-sabotage, negative self-talk, anything at all?
I think, number one, your thoughts and feelings are valid. Your feelings especially are valid. If you're struggling with, either, reframing your thought process or anything, like, it's okay. And like, also at the end of the day, we all have bad days, and like, we don't need to, pathologize every bad day. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. It's like, Instagram will tell you that everything now is a pathology. It's not.
You're allowed to just have a bad day.
Like, you're allowed to just have shitty attention sometimes. It's not
all part of the human experience.
Yeah. So, you have your bad days, you have those other things, but I think the important thing is, if like, is like the pattern recognition is like, if this is a consistent pattern of negative self-talk, a consistent pattern of feeling shitty and, behaviors that you either don't like or don't support you, like, that's okay. You just have to identify the pattern and try and correct it how you can. And then honestly, like, something is better than nothing, as long as you can do, maybe you can't entirely reframe your entire shitty training session that you did, but if you can find one positive thing about it, that's good. Yeah. If you get home and you've had a bad day and you can't do your entire skincare routine, as long as you just wash your face, you'll feel better. Like, number one, you'll check something off your to-do list, but then also like, your face will be clean and you'll feel better for it, So half-assed is better than no-assed.
I love that. We joke about it a lot in our house. If you're feeling really shitty, go take a shower.
Yes.
Like, it just, I don't know.
It's a reset.
Yeah.
Cleanse your body, cleanse your soul, start over.
Yeah.
And Shelby will be God.
Do not come for me.
Do not at me. Speaking of
I don't
that,
think anyone in our audience is going to be upset.
But like, and like, what I mean. I'm not saying that, I'm
not
not
saying
saying
believe what they want to believe. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. What if people would like to follow you on social media? Maybe somebody out there is like, hey, this sounds really cool. I'm going to follow Shelby doing like weightlifting things. Is that okay?
Yeah, come and find me. My account is public, which kind of regretting because the bots are popping off lately.
Have they been asking you for any more feet pics?
No, there was one time that I was asked to,
and I was so mad.
I know. He offered me $500 a week to, I don't even know do what, but I should have countered with $1,500 and just rolled with it. Anyways,
send him to me. I need that money.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. My handle is at Shelby Crispy, like crispy bacon, crispy.
Krispy Kreme, but with that C instead of a K.
Yeah, we don't need a trademark violation.
Yeah, no
based on that.
Yep.
Unless you want to sponsor us.
Yeah, feel free. Love me some Krispy Kreme donuts. I spent 10 years in New England without them, and I have missed them.
Did you see Shelby's shirt yesterday?
Oh yeah, I wore my Ruckus.
Yes.
I wore my Ruckus Donut shirt, and so Instagram is mad at me for this because I put like sponsored by Ruckus Donuts. Not really, but could you imagine? And they're like this is branded content. This is branded content. I'm like, I said not really. They don't sponsor me. I would love that. But yeah, if they do decide to sponsor me, Todd, I have
We should
a great
Todd.
a great catchphrase of. Well, oh shit, what was it? This bod brought to you by Todd at Ruckus Donuts.
Yes.
And like for those of you who are listening and can't see me, I'm a super heavyweight, so like I'm a big lady, and that's okay. But
she lifted a lot of big weight.
Mass moves mass.
It does.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening from Maine, go check out Ruckus Donuts.
Oh my god.
They're in Rockland now.
Yes.
Yes,
on the
they're
main,
so good.
on the main street there.
Yeah.
Everyone.
And delicious, and we
They're
love
so
them,
good.
and we love
They're
Todd,
the
and we're
best.
gonna tag him in this.
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I post weightlifting stuff semi-regularly, dog stuff every once in a while, and then I repost a lot of memes to my stories. So prepare yourself.
Gotta love the memes.
Love a good meme.
All right. Am I closing us out?
Yeah.
All right.
Take us away.
Dear God, take us away. Make sure to follow us, like us, rate us on all the things. You can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music and Podcasts. Watch the video on YouTube. Go follow our social media at Shield Maiden TC on all the things except Facebook, which is at our SMTC RVA. Yeah, I guess that's it. That's all the things.
Yeah, that's all the things.
Hey Warriors, Amber here with a little addendum to today's episode. After we finished recording, Shelby started to feel a little bit nervous and asked us to add on a bit of a disclaimer to the episode. So, while Shelby has a really cool background and history with neuroscience, she is not now, nor has she ever been, a licensed mental health professional. She's not a counselor or a therapist. She's just been mental health adjacent, if you will, and has picked up some great tips, tricks, and knowledge from her professional and personal experiences. I can also add in that Sydney and I are also not mental health professionals, and we are also speaking from places of personal experience and our own research. As always, if you are feeling overwhelmed by mental health concerns or feel that they are getting out of control, we encourage you to talk to your doctor or a licensed healthcare professional. And of course, keep listening to Bitch vs. Bear for more tips, tricks, and laughs.